Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So, I hope you're all having a good week. I'm having a pretty good week. So, one thing I'll start off by mentioning is that I'm not wearing glasses, and that's because I just had an operation on my second eye for cataracts, and as a result, I can have 20/20 vision with no glasses and can see colors just fine. And, I'm recovering very nicely from the operation a few days ago, and this is just wonderful. And one of the things that dawned on me, since this was the second eye, and I'd already had the other one operated on a couple months ago, I kind of knew what I was expecting, and so I was, much more relaxed and had much less anxiety about it, and was, much calmer about everything. And that made me realize that, I really didn't have to have lots of anxiety about it the first time around either. And then I started thinking and realizing, well, that really applies to a lot of life. A lot of things, I've had anxiety about, and really all I did was to stress myself out when it was completely unnecessary. Worrying about something, a.k.a. and there's actually a psychological term for worrying called anticipatory anxiety, which I think is, I did learned it not too long ago, and I think it's kind of a wonderful description of, a scientific term for worrying, and it's something I tend to do a lot. Maybe it's something that's, just part of my personality type, and maybe, some of your personality types. But it doesn't really solve anything. If something is going to go wrong, you having worried about it in advance isn't going to necessarily stop, whatever might have gone wrong. Um, but what it does is it just stresses you out. Now, that doesn't mean that, things can't go wrong and that it isn't worth thinking about, what your contingency plan would be if something did go wrong. It's absolutely appropriate to say, okay, if this happens, then here's how I should respond and try to, correct the situation or have a plan B or however you want to um, describe it. But, just it's kind of a psychological thing that, you think, well, if I shouldn't feel so bad about something having gone wrong if I spent, X number of hours worrying about it in advance. And, that's something that I logically know, have always known isn't the case, but nevertheless, it's very easy to fall into that trap that you really want to, don't just spend time needlessly worrying because that's not really useful, but just say, okay, here's things that might happen. If they happen, here's what I'll do to try and respond to the situation. A couple other things that, I, tend to have a lot of anxiety about travel because I have a disability, and that just sort of makes the logistics a lot more complicated. Um, but and then I actually confided into a friend of mine. Oh, I've got to travel, to this conference in a couple days, and I'm kind of worried about it. And then she wrote back, this really good letter. Says, yeah, you've totally got this. You're very accomplished. it's going to be no problem. It's going to go great. And, and it did. And so, you know, I think that was a good sort of, reality check on me to say, okay, you don't need to worry about stuff, associated with travel. And then a couple weeks ago, and I've talked about this on a few other videos, I was, one of the organizers of this, great big conference, and it was kind of really an important occasion. I really wanted it to go well. And then at some point I realized, look, there's a lot of people who are really capable, really talented, and really dedicated that are working with me on this. There's so much positive energy on this. I don't need to worry. I don't have to feel this way, about, worrying, oh, well, is this going to go? What if happens if it doesn't? What's that going to mean? Rather just trust your planning, trust the people you're working with, collaborating with, and trust fate to make things go in a positive way, and your own resourcefulness to deal with things in case there's things that do need to be remedied on the fly. So, this is kind of a work in progress. I don't necessarily have everything figured out, and just sort of worrying tends to be, um, an aspect of my personality. But I've kind of come to the realization, yeah, you can do this. You've got this, and just think through and remember that you got this far. You can deal with the situation in case something needs to be dealt with. So anyway, I hope that everything is going well in your life, and that everything you have coming up, can be successful, and that you can feel positive about it both in advance and afterwards. So thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your week.